are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today, we are looking back at the 2017 NBA draft, redrafting that draft. It's a pretty tough one to do. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Indeed. This, of course, unlike the 2019 draft, where there's not many very good players in it, unlike the 2016 draft, where it's not quite as strong, there is a lot of stud players in this one. It's quite similar to 2018, actually. A number of guys who make a case to be the number one pick. None of those players making a case to be the number one pick were actually the number one pick, but some pretty wild changes just 3 seasons after this draft went down. So let's have a look at how I viewed this draft from pick 1 through to pick 60. At pick 1, it was Markelle Fultz who went at number 1. He's not going number 1 in my redraft. It is Jayson Tatum that goes at number 1. It was a tough choice. I could have taken Donovan Mitchell here. I could have taken Bam Adebayo. You could even make an argument, I don't think it would be a good argument, but you can make an argument for John Collins, you can make an argument for Lonzo Ball in that spot. There are a number of guys who you can mix into this area. Probably wouldn't take Lonzo there, to be honest. But I think the realistic argument is between 3 players, Tatum, Mitchell, and Adebayo. I take Jayson Tatum there in that spot. Interestingly, in terms of this draft class, who leads it in VORP? It is Donovan Mitchell. In BPM, it is Bam Adebayo. And in win shares, it's also Bam Adebayo. Now, our Tatum is right up the top in all of them. He's 3rd in win shares, 2nd in BPM, and 2nd in VORP. So he's right at the top in all of those. But he is the guy that I take number 1. A lot of that is positional scarcity, just getting a wing who can defend, who's really starting to come into his own at the moment. That is who I'd be taking at number 1. He's really stepped it up and can be a top 10 fantasy player for years to come. So I'm taking Jayson Tatum at number 1. I am taking Donovan Mitchell at number 2.
He's done. He's good.
This is a tough one. I debated, do I take Mitchell? Do I take Adebayo here? In the end, I went with Donovan Mitchell. I think he does have some defensive potential, even though that has fallen off a little bit for him, but an ability to be a 20-point-per-game scorer, a guy that can handle the ball, that can distribute the ball as well. That hasn't always been recognized in Utah or been utilized all the time, but he is who I am taking there at number 2. Of course, Mitchell has been a fantastic option. I just talked about him on the Jazz Dynasty show. The fantasy numbers have been pretty stagnant, but he is a strong option to jump up there from where he was selected, which was at number 13, all the way up to number 2. At number 3, it is Bam Adebayo.
Bam, 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 bam.
First 2 seasons for Adebayo weren't particularly strong because he was stuck behind Hassan Whiteside, but since then he's been ridiculous. As I said, leads this draft class in BPM by a huge margin. And when I say huge margin, his BPM is 2. The next player is Tatum at 1.5. And while that might not seem big, it's 25% above. It is a big, big difference. And this is for a guy that's played only 5,500 minutes compared to almost 7,000 minutes for Tatum and 7,500 for Donovan Mitchell. For him to be that high up is impressive, and especially win shares, because win shares is a cumulative stat. It is not a rate stat, it is a cumulative stat, and he leads in that number. His win shares per 48 is also 3rd in this group as well. So doing it on a per minute basis, doing it on a volume basis, he has been really good, and I think if he'd started for the last 3 years, he might even be my number 1 pick. Now, the reason that I take Tatum and Mitchell ahead of Adebayo is I just think getting a wing and getting an initiator type guard player is probably a little bit more important than a defensive center. Although Bam can handle the ball, he's got to work on that shot a little bit more. But I don't think there's any argument, and I said at the start, there's other players you could jump up here. I don't really see any legitimate argument to have anyone else in the top 3 outside of these 3 guys. Next is where it gets interesting. The next 4 to 5 or 6 players, to me it's really close. At number 4, I went with De'Aaron Fox. Fox jumped up 1 spot from his original draft slot. You'll be stunned to know I didn't take Josh Jackson at number 4. Hey, those of you watching on YouTube at the moment, leave a comment below. Do you reckon Josh Jackson goes in the first round of this redraft? Let me know. Number 4 is De'Aaron Fox, jumping up 1 spot. Fox had a pretty rough rookie season, to be honest, but picked it up in his first 2 years. I think he's a little bit overrated at times. His BPM is actually a negative over this time frame, but he is top 10 in VORP from this draft class. Ninth in win shares as well, but that's nowhere near that top level of players. And again, having a competent point guard who's shown an ability to be defensively pretty good, but also offensively ramp up his game and upscale his game is why I jumped him ahead of someone who arguably, or not even arguably, definitely has been more productive than someone like John Collins. That is why I jumped Fox ahead of him, putting him at number 4. Now, the number 2 pick in this draft was Lonzo Ball. He has slid all the way down to number 5. Now, when I tweeted about me doing this redraft, and plenty of you threw in your top 10s, and a few of them didn't have Lonzo in it, and that is ridiculous to me. I think you are being skewed by the narrative that Lonzo sucks, he can't shoot, because that is absolute bullshit. He has been unbelievably good this season. I think he's a really strong NBA starting point guard. He probably will never become an all-star, but I don't think he's that far away from it. The shooting has been a concern for him. There's no doubt about that. But in this class, he is 6th overall in VORP at 3.3. Yes, that's half of the number that Donovan Mitchell has put up, but I still think dropping him outside the top 10 is too large of an overreaction. At number 6, Johnny Isaac. This is exactly where he went in the draft. You know I love his not his defensive potential. He is an unbelievable defender already. Can he bump that up offensively? I think he's still playing out of position. I think he's a 4-5 rather than a 3-4. So there's more room for him to get better. The offensive upside is, I guess, somewhat of a concern as to where he goes there. 12th overall in BPM in this group. In this draft class, 17th in win shares per 48. So the overall numbers haven't been as stellar as some of these other guys, but I'm taking him for his ability to guard the 3, guard the 4, guard the 5, and put in that spot. Now, a very easy argument could be made for my number 7 pick here, the Baptist Johnny Collins, to jump up ahead of John Isaac, and I don't think that's wrong. And in fact, if I did this in 2 days' time, I might change my mind. They were that close. So Johnny Collins comes all the way from number 19 up to number 7. It was stupid at the time that he fell down to number 19. He comes up to number 7 here, and if you wanted to put him ahead of De'Aaron Fox, I don't think that's a wrong decision. I think having him at 4 would absolutely be fine. Having him at 5, having him at 6, any of those spots for Johnny Collins would absolutely work out to me. He's 4th in win shares in this draft class. He is 6th in box score plus minus. He is 5th in VORP, just been super successful. You worry about the Hawks and how they're thinking of him moving forward, what his best position is, where's he going to defend, does he fit on a good team, and they are all legitimate concerns. But for now, I think you can't go past him at number 7. At number 8.
But what about scarves?
OG.
Balenciaga
Stop,
ones.
OG. You better stop, OG.
Hello there.
The Jedi, the Scarf Master, OG Anunoby comes in at number 8. Similarly to Collins, it was pretty dumb when Anunoby fell as far as he did in the draft, all the way to number 23. He had that knee injury in college, but he was really good as a rookie. Did fall off as a second-year player after dealing with the death of his father, and then I think he had appendicitis in the playoffs, and we didn't see him. But this season, he's been really, really good as a starting 3/4. Well, starting 3, but playing some of the 4 as well. Anunoby has been really impressive in terms of what he's been able to do. 6th in win shares out of this class, despite some of the limitations last season. Now, some of that's helped by the fact that he's playing on the Raptors and they've won a ton of games. But Anunoby, to me, jumps all the way up to number 8. And then at number 9, it is Markelle Fultz, the number 1 overall pick, whose first 2 years were a disaster. I think he's been all right. I think he's been pretty good this season. And that he has given me the confidence to say, well, you are a starting point guard in this NBA. I still think you can be better than what you've been so far. The shot is still a bit wonky, but you've shown enough that I get to pick 9 here. I don't think I'm definitely not letting anyone else go ahead of you here at number 9. The upside is still there for a guy who is still pretty young, so I'm taking Markelle Fultz at number 9. At number 10, you'll notice someone who dropped out of that top 7, and that was the 7th overall pick, Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen has been okay. This season, he was dreadful. No, he wasn't dreadful. He was shit. I wouldn't say dreadful, but he wasn't good. He's been solid enough, but where does he go from here? Can he ever be the number 1 option on a good team? No, I don't think so. Can he ever be a passable defender? No. Can he handle the ball and pass? No. I don't see all that stuff for him. I think this is perfectly the right spot for him, but those players ahead of him, I don't really see any argument for having Markkanen ahead of them. Fultz, maybe you could say Markkanen's outperformed Fultz. Well, actually, you could definitely say that because it's true, but I still would rather have Fultz over him. Anunoby, you could say Lowry scored more points. Of course, basketball's not just about scoring points. It's about how you get those points and how you stop the other team scoring the points. So there are other factors there. So I can understand that. I cannot see any situation in which you would have Lowry ahead of John Collins at number 7 or in that top 7 mix. But he comes in there at number 10. Number 11 is Jarrett Allen, who I think has worked himself into being a solid starting center, even if that absolute nonsense move in Brooklyn did happen with Puppet Master Jacques Vaughn, that's his name, Jacques Vaughn came in and said, no, we've got to start DeAndre Jordan, the significantly worse center of the two. Allen has been one of the best players in this draft class, second in win shares behind Bam Adebayo, just marginally, second in win shares per 48, fifth in box score plus minus, fourth in VORP, yet again really limited by Atkinson and Vaughn over those first couple of years. I wouldn't even hesitate to take him ahead of Markkanen, to be honest. I think his ability as a defensive center, he's got more offensive upside than we've seen. Really, really strong stuff. Now things start to get wacky. Pick 12, well, not that wacky, but it's like no guys where I look at these players and go, well, they're definites. They're players who've established themselves. I don't really see it for many of these guys. At number 12, the exact spot where he was drafted in the draft, the Duck, Luke Canard. I think he's a perfectly solid starting shooting guard. He can average 17, 18, 19 points per game. He can handle the ball a little bit. Has he got star potential? No. Is he solid enough to be a 5-6 year starter, like an Evan Fournier type? Yes. Much more than that? I don't think so. But that's totally fine in this area of the draft, and getting a rotation player, not only a rotation player, but a solid starter at pick 12 shows just how bloody good this draft is, because you don't really get 12 solid starters out of drafts usually. And that's exactly what I think we've got here. At number 13.
Maximum Derrick.
Derrick White comes all the way in from pick number 29 to be the 13th pick. You know that I think he's good. You know that I think he's been misused in San Antonio this season. He is 8th in this class in VORP, which VORP, again, is a cumulative stat, not a rate stat. Barely played as a first-year player as well, so that's an impressive thing to see. 8th in box score plus minus. He's 13th in win shares. He's 12th in win shares per 48. So I think this is about the right spot for Derrick White. I'd definitely have him, obviously because I did it, have him over these other guys picked ahead of him, or picked behind him here, sorry. A big jump up from 29 to number 13. At number 14, the 10th pick in this draft was Zach Collins. Collins has been okay, but again, just some other players who were drafted later, jumping ahead of him, pushes him down a few spots. And I don't think that's too much of an indictment on Collins. It's just that those other guys, like Adebayo, like Donovan Mitchell, like Derrick White, like Jarrett Allen, like OG Anunoby, like John Collins, all those players have been better than him. So that pushes him down a couple of spots. At number 15, it's the first second-round player to move up as far as he has, and that's number 15, Dillon Brooks. Brooks is going to lead the NBA in fouls as a guard, which is an astonishing figure. He has wild shooting fluctuations. He can be a long two ball hog type of a guy, but he still has an ability that when he needs to, he can be a volume scorer. Now, on a good team, you're never going to become a good team by him being that player, and he's going to have to take a step back at some point on Memphis. But in terms of the guys who are coming behind him, no reason to see Brooks shouldn't be the 15th pick here. I think he's a really strong player in that lottery zone. If you wanted to take him ahead of Zach Collins, I understand it. I wouldn't take him ahead of anybody else in that. I wouldn't even consider it really, but some of you would say I'd rather have him over Canard, and I would disagree, but some of you will say that. At number 16, another second-round guy, a late second-round player here, and that is Monte Morris of the Denver Nuggets, pick 51. Now, I'm not sure that Monte is a guy that you want to be a starting point guard on a very good team, but absolutely he can handle the role, and he is a guaranteed lock-in backup point guard for the next 7-8 years. Unbelievably careful with the ball, good passer, shooting's been strong. I like Morris here. What more can you want? Pick 16, here's my backup point guard for the next 8 years. Really hard to go past that. At number 17, Josh the Hitman Hart comes in, another player who was selected towards the end of the first round, in fact, the very end of the first round, pick number 30, a really strong rebounding guard. He's a little bit older. He came in as a senior out of Villanova, has shown some shooting ability. He's shown some scoring ability and some defensive ability. Again, just a solid rotation player that if you need him to start, he can. If you need him to come off the bench and play 25 minutes, he can. Just another strong option there. His former teammate, of course, the bloke that you know as the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, comes in at number 18. Now, there are a lot of you out there who would have had Kuzma in the top 10. A lot of you obviously would be wrong, but a lot of you would have had Kuzma in the top 10. A player who's definitely been bumped by the fact that Jeannie Buss loves him and that he had opportunities on some terrible Lakers teams to shoot a lot. His win shares have been pretty okay, actually, to be honest. 11th overall in win shares. Box score plus minus is not as favorable, 21st in that number. If we look at Vorp, he's 17th. Defensively, he sucks. His shooting has been wonky outside of his first season. He doesn't pass or defend or rebound, but he can be a voluminous scorer. It does not fit really at all on this Lakers team the way they're currently constructed in terms of being able to do what's his best role. But I think this is probably a fair spot for Kuzma. Love to hear arguments as to why you want him higher. I could easily see arguments why you'd want him lower, but I think this is about the right area. A 25-minute a night big man who can come in and can scale up if needed on the right team, but if you're relying upon him to lead you to winning, you are not going to get those wins. Let's look at the next bunch of guys now. At number 19, it is the tank, Tom Bryant. Bryant is one of the worst defensive players in the NBA, at least one of the worst defensive centers in the NBA, but he still puts up good numbers. He is third in this class in box score plus minus. He is fourth in win shares per 48. He is quite a strong statistical player. The defensive stuff is just the real worry with him. I don't think he's a long-term starting center, but he was a second-round pick who absolutely deserves to go here. Not someone you want to rely upon for 30 minutes, but as a 25-minute center, a 20-minute backup center, he's a definite rotation NBA player who can be a dynamite, efficient finisher who can step out and hit threes. All of that stuff is really, really strong. I think this is the right spot for him. Now things get real wonky because I don't really know this next 40 guys or next 30 guys how the hell to fit them in properly. I think there's a pretty clear, in my opinion, delineation between number 19, Tom Bryant, and the rest of this group. Because at number 20, I've got Frank Ntilikina. Misused in New York by some shit coaches and some shit management, but he hasn't really shown us huge amounts. There are flashes here and there. He's one of the best defensive point guards in the NBA, but can he score? Can he shoot? Can he pass? Can he do any of those things? We still don't know. I think I still like the fact that he can hang as a defensive guy and has shown some offensive skill that's worth looking at, but I'm not confident in it. But at 20, why not? Pick 21, Isaiah Hartenstein. Love what he can do. Love what he does in the G League. I've loved what I've seen from him in the NBA. Mike D'Antoni doesn't. That's why we're not seeing him play. Put him in another situation. Could he develop into a starting center? I think there's a real chance at it. I think he's a pretty good player. I think he's got great advanced type projection stuff that can look interesting for him. We haven't really seen it because of how things have looked in Houston. But in saying that, in terms of win shares per 48, he's sixth in this group. Ahead of him, Tony Bradley at number 1, weirdly enough, Jarrett Allen, Bam Adebayo, Tom Bryant, John Collins, and Hartenstein. Hartenstein's played 487 minutes, barely played at all. But his statistical translations coming over from Germany were great. They look pretty strong now. Hey, I'm taking him at 21. At number 22, this Smith is the wood slanger. It's Dennis Smith Jr. I was really high on Dennis Smith Jr. and I stuffed it up. I had him as the number 3 player in this class, and that's obviously wrong. He's been bad. But we've seen still flashes, the athleticism is still there, but the shooting, the decision-making, the defense is all really suspect. I'm still happy to take that flyer on him here, take that opportunity, because if you're picking him at pick 22 versus me being an absolute dick nose and picking him at pick number 3, there's no real downside in picking him at 22. But yeah, he has been a disappointment, as has the next bloke, Malik Monk, who shows flashes and then goes off the rails, pisses off his coach, pisses off his next coach, gets suspended indefinitely for a drug suspension. We don't even know what the hell happened. Just can't establish anything. And when things start going well, he screws it up. Is he a irredeemable numbnuts? Maybe. Is he a player that deserved to be picked 11? No, not when looking back on it. But again, looking at this point, the shot creation, the ability to score a little bit, I'll take it at this spot in the draft. At number 24, I am going with Terrence Ferguson. I'm giving him credit because he's been a rotation player on a good team for 3 years. He's also been bad at it, but he's been a rotation player. I don't think that he's ever going to be a statistical guy, a guy that puts up good numbers, and a guy that's necessarily going to last in a rotation. But for as strong as this draft was in those first 15, 20 picks, where you could say they're all starter caliber players, things start to get pretty rough in this back end, and filling out a 60 pick guy, there are guys who will go, well, they played 2 years and now they're out of the NBA. So how the hell do I fill out this top 60? And we're seeing that here. Number 25 is not the 15th overall pick in this draft, which was Justin Jackson. This is Frank Jackson, who missed all of his rookie season, came in second year with the Pelicans, and showed that when given an opportunity, he can fill it up and he can be all right. He doesn't pass. He's not super efficient. He doesn't defend all that well. But again, a guy that can be a rotation guard is absolutely a fine choice for me. 26 is Harry Giles, who we're really starting to see on the court a little bit more this season. The Kings have been the Kings, so that's really skewed our perception of Giles as to can he stick as a player, because we don't know, because the Kings have dicked him around and declined options. But I think he's been solid enough out there. I still think there are significant worries in Giles, and I would not want to be relying upon him to be a starting center. But as a rotation center, sure, why not? 27 is Edmonds Summoner, a guy who, much like Giles, missed his first season in the NBA with a knee injury. He was picked number 52, but talking to Pacers guys, I talked to Tony East a couple of weeks ago, he's massively high on Sumner. And Sumner is a guy who, again, a combo guard who can score a little, can pass, can defend really well. We haven't really seen much from him so far in the NBA, but I think this is that absolute chance for him to turn into a bloke who is your rotation guy, 20 minutes a night, and can push it as a starter as we move forward. Let's round out the first round of this redraft with pick number 28, the water boy, Chris Boucher, undrafted in this draft. Obviously an absolute stats darling with his ability to block shots and rebound pretty strongly, but a guy that is a little bit weak in terms of body size and body shape and body strength, and that is all a concern for him. But I'm taking him here just for his ability to be offensively pretty strong and defensively pretty good as well. 29 is Tony Bradley. Disaster his first year, but has established himself as a strong backup center, and I'm not going to deny that looking at his win shares per 48, and it's that much better than everybody else's, made me go, well, is this something I'm not seeing here with Bradley? He was picked towards this spot in the draft anyway. I think he was picked at number 28. Yes, he was. So I'm taking him one spot lower, but I think that's fine. Backup center who's not really a starting caliber player. And then to round things out, at pick number 30, DJ Wilson of the Milwaukee Bucks. Wilson didn't play as a rookie, looked pretty good last season, and then has disappeared off the face of the earth on a really strong Bucks team. Could he be a rotation player on a less good team? I'm pretty sure he can be. I don't want to take him at the spot he got drafted because that, at the time, was way too high. In retrospect, it's also way too high. He went at pick number 17. And to take him ahead of someone like John Collins and Anunoby and Jarrett Allen at the time was ridiculous, and it's even more ridiculous now. But I still think he comes in here to round out our first round at pick number 30. Into the second round, pick number 31, his teammate, Sterling Brown. Again, just too many bodies in Milwaukee for him to be a consistent guy, but on a worse team, put him on the Hornets and he plays 25 minutes a night and looks pretty good. I think Sterling Brown is still got some upside to be a rotation player. Number 32 is Shemi Ojeleye, never a starting caliber player, but if you need someone who's big and strong and can defend, Ojeleye does that. And then we go on to number 33. This is Jackson. This is not the Jackson that was picked at number 15. This is the one that was picked at number 4, Josh Jackson, who has been terrible. His shooting is rough. His defense has issues. He only seems to thrive when he is, for some reason, the number one option, and he never should be that. So I think still taking him here because he can go out and fill it up. He can still provide some flashes, but you don't want to rely upon him for anything. So I'm taking him here at 33. And there's some of you who replied to me on Twitter, I don't think he should be drafted. And I get why you're saying that, but when you look at the guys coming under him, I feel pretty good about taking him at this spot, 33. 34 is PJ Dozier, an undrafted player who just his ability to fill it up in the G League and his moments we've seen in the NBA have been good. I think there's still some upside there in PJ Dozier. This is what I'm saying, that this draft gets a little bit rough after this spot. At 35, another undrafted player, Luke Cornett, the new Robert Horry, who the Shadow King Jim Boylan, who thankfully is probably not going to be a head coach for too much longer, has really liked. But Cornett has shown some ability to bang in the three, to block some shots, and that's enough as an early second round pick. And then at number 36, Jordan Bell started out his career unbelievably and then disappeared. And some of that is the Malik Monks going about him. Is he a guy that is a complete dipshit off the court? It appears to be. Teams giving up on him. The Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Wolves, the Rockets. I don't even know what the hell team he's on anymore. He's moved around that much and he can't find a rotation spot. Undersized center who was really good defensively and could pass, but then nothing ever developed and he got worse. I'm still taking him at 36 despite the struggles so far. At number 37, maybe this is, and probably is, me being a bit of a prisoner of the moment, but Michael Mulder, I'm taking at 37. He was undrafted. He didn't play in the NBA until this season, but he's come in, he can shoot, and he can be that guy that comes off the bench as your 10th man. I need a shooter. Michael Mulder can be that player. And again, some of it's recency bias because he's playing for the Warriors, but he's looking pretty good out there. And I think that sort of player archetype, a wing who can bang in threes, is pretty bloody needed. And I think that's where we're looking here for Mulder. At 38, Damo Dotson, very similar sort of player to Mulder. And maybe I should have taken Dotson over Mulder just because he's done it for a longer period of time, but I'm taking him there. Then at 39, Blaine Bacon. Oh, is that too high for Bacon? Because he's not good. On a team that's as bad as Charlotte, he can't even get in the rotation. But again, just a guy that's at least had some moments in the NBA, so maybe I'll take a crack at him there. At number 40, the third Jackson in this draft. This one is Justin Jackson, who, to me, is one of the current worst players in the NBA. But this draft class, it does fall off after these players. So I'm taking him here because he has had some moments, and sometimes he has some scoring bursts and some three-point shooting and some defense. It's just not reliable enough. 41 is Jonah Bolden. Played well in that 1 or 2 games he played for Phoenix. I thought he did all right in Philadelphia, but just doesn't seem to be able to find the right home at the moment. 42 is Wezawundu, who is perfectly capable to be the 15th man on a roster. 43 actually is Onjes Pasechniks, who we didn't see for 2 years, but then in his little cameo this season for the Wizards, it did enough to make me go as a third string center. If he's on my roster as my third stringer, I don't think that's that outrageous to have him there. 44, TJ Leaf, an absolute whiff of a draft pick by the Pacers at pick number 18. Look at the guys picked after him. Collins, one picked after. Giles, Allen, Anunoby, Kuzma, White, Hart. So many options you would rather have over to TJ Leaf, who probably isn't going to be an NBA player for much longer. At 45, it's an undrafted player, Jonathan Motley. Had moments for Dallas and the Clippers in the first couple of years where he comes in, given an opportunity, and he plays well. He's just not good enough to demand a regular opportunity, but I think taking him there is fine. And then another Clippers player who I believe went to Atlanta at the trade deadline, Derrick Walton. Again, on the court, when he played, I thought he looked all right. But these are really the dregs of things. 47 is Sindarius Thornwell, not in the NBA anymore. 48 is Kadeem Allen. 49 is Alpha Kaba. We haven't even seen Alpha Kaba in the NBA yet, but he was the 60th pick, a guy that I liked before he came over. I thought he showed some things occasionally at Summer League when he came over. If we look at his international numbers for this season, he's playing 22 minutes a night. He's averaging 9 points with 9 rebounds and a block per game. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Kaba as a relatively mobile big man at this selection, which is number 49. Number 50 is Vlatko Cancar of the Denver Nuggets. 51, Caleb Swanigan. 52, Justin Patton, who again was ludicrously selected as early as he was. I didn't like the pick at the time. I didn't think he'd be as bad as he's been. The broken foot hasn't helped, but he is way down here. 53 is Nigel Williams-Goss. 54, Davon Reed, who we really haven't seen at all in the last couple of seasons, but a guy who I thought had some potential, so I wouldn't mind him to see him in a better situation apart from the Phoenix Suns to see how the development goes. 55 is Frank Mason. Realistically, not an NBA caliber starter. Probably should have him a little bit higher than this, to be honest. 56 is Sasha Vezenkov. We haven't seen him come across, a Bulgarian forward, who I do think can be an NBA player. I reckon we'll see him in a couple of years' time. At 57, Onjin Yaramaz, a point guard who plays in Europe at the moment. 58, DeAndre Burton. 59, Amelie Jefferson. And number 60, because I had to find someone, Tyler Lydon, another horrendous first-round pick in this draft, who is out of the league in 2 years and just barely played it. He was absolutely atrocious. And actually, if I have a look at these draft picks, who was the lowest in terms of box score plus minus? Wow, this is interesting. Let's look at, let's go through this actually, just to round this out. Out of all the guys who were drafted, the lowest box score, lowest VORP out of every player is Dylan Brooks. That is pretty amazing. The lowest box score plus minus is Davon Reed. The lowest win shares per 48 is Nigel Williams-Goss. And the lowest win shares in total is Josh Jackson, who has been the most negatively impactful player on winning out of this entire draft class. So there you go. That is my 2017 redraft. Let me know what you think. Who would you have at 1? What guys did I screw up on? Josh, you're a wanker. Which one am I a wanker for? Let me know down in the comments. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to check out today's episode of Locked On NBA as well. Tell your smart device, hey, smart device, play Locked On NBA. Subscribe to this show, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, smash subscribe, hit the bell, all of those things. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.